Okay, we're back. Continuing to work on this drawing. It's kind of a cool background behind us. I'm in New York City in like kind of a studio space, and it has some cool building views behind me, which is like always kind of inspiring to work in, a nice inspiring space. I have about 45 minutes or so to work, 45 minutes, which I think should be perfect as like the second session into this drawing. And today should be like another kind of new format where this will mostly be picture in picture with the drawing itself. So actually I'm gonna jump into that picture in picture side of it right now. So it makes sense actually to see this alongside the drawing because you could kind of understand from the start some of the things that I'm working on. So in general, one of the places that I left off yesterday that I needed to fix was like adding in the 2D construction. So I forgot to put in the rest of the hair. I didn't really flesh out like the shoulders or anything and kind of create, the whole piece or the whole drawing. So I started by going back and fixing that because really in terms of process, I should be doing 2D construction followed by 3D construction, blocking in the shadow shapes, masking the shadow shapes, edges, and lastly the halftones. And so today my goal is to kind of finish hopefully the 3D construction and even maybe masking the shadow shapes or blocking the shadow shapes, but I probably won't start adding any tone until like day 3. And then, day 3 will be tone, and then 4 will be kind of correcting those. Is kind of how I'm picturing this, but let's see how this goes, you never know. I'm recording this, even though you're seeing it as the drawing is happening right now, I'm recording this before the drawing happened. So I'm more telling you like what my plan is, and then afterwards we'll talk about what actually happened. So some of the other things that I just noticed that I have to fix is kind of, there's like a little bit of a flatness of the face that needs to be corrected. And generally that's like kind of an issue of not emphasizing enough of the like, let's say the 3-dimensionality of the forms. So this is something that's like corrected in the 3D construction where I need to be very clear about, if you just kind of flatten this out and are not clear that there's actually a plane change, like this is the front of the face and this is the side of the face, right? Like if I was a box, it would be like this and they would meet at that 90-degree angle. And so that kind of needs to be present in the drawing. And if it's not, then you kind of get this like very flat look. Also, I noticed like just really quickly, like looking at this, that the lips are slightly off. And again, this is something, I think I was talking about this in the previous recording, like the previous session, taking the time to step away from a drawing and then come back to it, you see all of these little things that maybe you had missed when you were in the process. And it's just like the nature of it. Like as much as you can try and see everything that you want to see in one sitting, it's actually really difficult. In fact, one strategy that is like really commonly used is if you're digital drawing, you literally flip the drawing, and then you can start to see some mistakes that come out. And then another method in the physical world, like if you're drawing like I am, you can actually hold it to a mirror or hold a mirror up to it. So a lot of artists and illustrators, draftsmen will have like a little mirror in their studio, a handheld mirror that they can kind of, they'll look at the mirror and kind of compare it across and see like what looks different when you flip it. And then another strategy that you can use though, if you don't have a mirror with you, is to just take a photo of the drawing where it's at and then flip it. And so I actually did that. So like I took the photo last night when I finished drawing, and I was looking at it earlier today when I was kind of commuting on the subway. I looked at it and I flipped it, and I started to kind of like make some notes. Okay, what do I think needs to be changed? And then as soon as I see it in person, it also like I arrived at the studio where the drawing was, and I was like, okay, this is exactly what I need to be changing. So these are kind of techniques that you can use to kind of like recognize your mistakes. Other things I'm going to keep in mind as I'm drawing is maintaining this gesture. Again, the gesture is pretty slight compared to like some of the more extreme angles that we were doing, but it's still like delicate, really beautiful, and it's something that I want to capture here. So I'm going to make sure to maybe even like emphasize it, but make sure that I keep the gesture present. And I actually see some places where I can kind of keep the gesture and kind of, keep some, I might even put in some lines that are, you'll probably see this, like kind of indicating a bit more of the boxiness form, just so I really capture that angle of the head and this like 3-dimensionality. But that's kind of the plan for the drawing, and just kind of continue to work through the process, and I'll be working patiently, working slowly. So, I think I did about 35 minutes, 40 minutes of drawing yesterday, and that included doing like a little thumbnail study beforehand. So this should be another 30, 45 minutes. So in total, we're at like an hour and a half at the end of this drawing. So let's see how far we get. Okay, so just finished about 45-minute session of drawing. And I think I carried my plan out pretty faithfully to what we had discussed. So I started mostly by looking at 2D construction. I got just a bit distracted at one point, but at some point relatively early, I had the shoulders blocked in, I had the hair blocked in. And then I spent most of the session making like really, really small adjustments that I think were really meaningful. Like generally trying to look at things like the gesture and trying to preserve like the orientation of the face through the 3D construction and the block in. Definitely like ran into some challenges. I think this is something that I had mentioned, that when you're drawing on this kind of paper, it has a tendency to smudge very frequently, and I was running into that a lot. Luckily, this paper also has the property that you can really erase on it a lot of times before you start to have any problems. So I'm able to kind of like any smudging or like bad lines or anything like that, I can actually like really pick them up. And this came in handy a lot on this side of the face, so like her right side of her face, but like the left for the drawing. I probably redid that 10 or 15 times during this drawing, just trying to get like the proportion correct, but then also the gesture. I'm finding that if I copy what is in the reference exactly in terms of the angle of the face, it's a bit more rigid than I would like. Like I kind of want to emphasize this gesture that she's kind of, looking over her shoulder, that she's rotating and looking over her shoulder, and maybe even like tilting her head a little bit. And so to do that, that edge of the face is really important in communicating that. So I kind of messed with that a little bit, back and forth. I also deployed some Steve Houston on that edge, and I might deploy it later. Since I was having trouble with it, I was trying to like vary the line thickness and have it kind of thicker around the cheekbone, and then thicker around the chin, and then for the tissue part, the kind of fattier tissue part of the face, leaving that thinner. And I might, as I get further into this drawing, I might mess with that a little bit. I also blocked in most of the shadows at this point. Next time I'll start by like doing probably a few more corrections to the 3D construction, because I'll have that space to let it breathe and look at it. And then go directly into shadows and starting to actually get some, tone down on the paper. And by tone, I mean like shading, like actually put some value in that's not line. But overall, I'm enjoying how this is going. And I think, like we'll have a nice, if we take the images of each day, it'll be kind of a nice sequence of the process. In fact, I should do a 6-step, I'm just thinking about this now, I should do like a 6-step post maybe on Instagram or something like that has each of the elements. 2D, 3D, block shadow, mask shadow, edges, halftone. And it would be kind of nice, like kind of emphasizing a little bit like how I'm thinking about these things and how I'm drawing. There seems to be 1 or 2 like proportions mistakes that I really need to look at, and I'm hoping that like the ship hasn't sailed on fixing them, because there is a point where it's like you either have to start over or just kind of accept these issues. I'm also not trying to get a likeness, so like it doesn't matter to me so much that it like perfectly matches the reference. Like if the mouth is a little smaller, it's not like I'm trying to draw the character of the, like if you're trying to draw a portrait, let's say you're commissioned a portrait and you're trying to draw someone, you really have to match the proportions perfectly. But what I'm really after is like a drawing. So if the mouth is like a bit smaller on the drawing than the reference, but it still looks good as a drawing, then I'm more or less okay with that. But just in the interest of doing good art, I'm also interested in thinking about the likeness. But yeah, I think just in general, I think this helped illustrate too, like this is like literally I'm drawing at half the speed, maybe even less than what I draw in the sketchbook. So in the sketchbook, to get to the stage that I'm at now is like normally actually probably around 30 minutes. So actually, yeah, it's way slower. And then this is now after probably about an hour and 10, hour 20 minutes of drawing, I'm at that same stage. So it's really, really slowed down. It's the same exact process, it's the same process, but you're really slowing it down so that you can think about more than one thing at a time. Like in a sketchbook, I'm just thinking about, we talked about it so much, like if I'm doing one drawing, I'm just thinking about gesture, or I'm just thinking about line. And because I'm so laser focused on one thing, you kind of get to skip making, checking or thinking about those other things, and you can operate much faster. But as soon as you're trying to incorporate all these other things and really think about them, you need to slow down. Like it's natural. Like I'm not even consciously being like, okay, I should draw slower, since it's more like, okay, gesture, line, process, gesture, line, process, versus just line, or gesture, 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 gesture. So it's a bit of like a different way of thinking that kind of forces you into different habits. So which is kind of interesting. I'm super excited to keep going actually. And, I'm fortunate I have to run, or I would honestly take a little break, simulate giving myself some space to breathe, like maybe go for a walk so that I can come back with a bit fresher eyes. And then I would try and continue actually tonight because I'm super motivated. But unfortunately, that's not in the cards. So instead, we will be back here tomorrow.